depending on the time of the year, you're going against the winds, against the seas, and you're going through treacherous conditions that are uncharted. So incredible achievement to get through.
Did he discover New Zealand as well?
Well, no, he didn't discover anything, but as people say, he discovered Australia. We've been here 65,000 years with people, so he didn't discover anything. And he didn't claim to. Other people have claimed he did, but he didn't claim to.
Okay, all right.
So he was the first European to circumnavigate New Zealand.
Okay.
And he was the first European to sight the east coast of what we call Australia. It was then known as New Holland. But he charted from Point Hicks in eastern Victoria up to Cape York. And so that was, he knew that no one had charted it. Abel Tasman had been from Batavia, which is Jakarta, and travelled around the west coast and touched the bottom of Tasmania, what we call Tasmania. He named it Van Diemen's Land, and then he went to a little bit of New Zealand and back around New Guinea and back to Batavia. So he'd seen a little bit of it, but he hadn't seen the east coast of Australia. But the indigenous people have been in Melbourne for 40,000 years and in northern Australia for 65,000 years. So, you know, there's no discovery, but there's a creation of a chart. And from those days, it was very much the charting and colonising was done from Europe.
Yeah, sure.
Which is what happened to
Same thing in Canada, US, just a bit earlier. But yeah, very interesting.
But you'll see that in the stable here, there's a video that runs for about 10 minutes.
Okay.
And on this wall, there's a map. It's an electronic map. You touch and drag, and you can see his 3 voyages. If you press the button that says all 3 voyages, you'll get a picture of the world, and that'll show you where he went. And he travelled for 10 years, and the ship travelled at between about 7 and 12 kilometres an hour. So about the pace, about half the pace, a quarter of the pace you could ride a bike.
Yeah.
But for 10 years. And eventually he died in Hawaii, but he left a legacy of fantastic discovery and scientific creation.
So you said he was to Tahiti as well.
Yeah, the reason for the first voyage in 1768 was to map the transit of Venus. So if you go back to that time in history, in the mid-1750s, when this cottage was
1755.
1755. So the ship's sextant, we see it as being a very old implement. It was created in the mid-1700s.
So just sorry to interrupt you. So this, we were told that this was brought from England here.
Yeah.
Bricks by brick, everything here.
Yes.
To build this cottage where he was actually living.
No, he didn't. No one has lived here.
But
This
back
is
in
a
England.
museum here.
Oh, okay.
Back in England, his parents lived in this as a retirement home. So his dad, James, Grace Crook, that's James Senior. Grace is his mother, James is his father.
Was this
1755,
engraved by himself or his parents?
his parents built this cottage as a retirement home.
Oh, okay.
Cook never lived here.
Oh,
He
okay.
didn't live here when it was in England. He didn't live here. No one had been to Melbourne.
But it was his family's cottage.
It was his parents' retirement home, and we believe his 2 little sisters moved into it in 1755. They would have been in their early teens, but he was 27 when this was built. So he'd already left home. He was in the Merchant Navy, and he joined the Royal Navy in 1755.
Wow.
Excuse me. So he left England 1755, joined the Royal Navy, Canada, North Atlantic, Iceland, the Baltic, and cut his teeth as a navigator and chart maker, and worked his way up the order and became midshipman, and then they promoted him to lieutenant, and he was in charge of the Endeavour voyage, which was a scientific voyage. Most of the voyages at that time were commercial. Tasman was an explorer paid by the government. Cook was an explorer paid by the government, whereas most of them were commercial. So buccaneers, pirates, maybe.
Yeah.
Seeking
Trades.
money.
Money, yeah.
The spices of Dutch were very strong in the spices of the Spice Islands, being Indonesia. The English,
India went
East
for
India
spices.
Company,
Yeah.
it was all about spices, and Sri Lanka and Pakistan, what we call Pakistan today,
Was a combined India at that time.
it was all about the East India Company, which was a British Raj, and they controlled a lot of the royalty, the pockets of royalty around India and what we call Pakistan today. In this country, much the same. This country had hundreds of nations in this country, a bit like Europe. You know, there was diplomacy between the different areas. This area here in Melbourne is the home of the Kulin Nation, a number of tribes, the Woiwurrung, the Wathaurong, the Boonwurrung, the Wurundjeri. And so the Kulin Nation were here, and they had diplomacy between here and other nations within this country we call Australia, this land.
Okay. Concerning the native people are called Aboriginals, is that correct?
In this country, yes.
Yes.
Well, we call them First Nations.
First Nations, okay.
The ones in the Melbourne area, the Kulin Nation, they call themselves Koori. They don't call themselves. So if you go to the Federation Square near Flinders Street Station, Federation Square has the Koori Heritage Trust. Very worthwhile going through there.
I'll write that down.
Yeah.
Koori Heritage Trust, K-O-O-R-I-E. So they'll give you a much better understanding of their heritage and their culture. You can do tours from there. They're not free, but they're excellent.
What's it called?
The Koori, K-O-O-R-I-E.
Okay.
It's the Yarra building within Federation Square. Fantastic to go in there. And another really good place is the Bunjalika Centre. If you go into the Melbourne Museum, which you have to pay, there's a whole section there on Koori heritage. And that's well worth seeing. You know, I'm not qualified to give you that representation of that. I'm Captain Cook today.
Okay,
so
Captain
Cook. Can we go inside the house?
Go
and
inside, have a look at how we live, and go in the stable separately, and have a look at the garden and how they live there.
Okay.
Today we might use
There's
a barber
video
or woman
in
who
the
might agree
stable.
on shoes
In there,
and
okay.
this
You have to
item
come out to get to that.
Okay, thank you.
Oh, stone doormat.
What you get on for what is
Too hot. You're going to have to cup of tea now.
It is time to line father's clock. His arrival approaches. Daughter is out to fetch water to boil for father's bohe before we set ourselves to rest fortnight. And the tea's a wee bit on the dear side, but this I don't mind. A little comfort after the trouble we have gone through this past few years is not too much to ask or to have to pay for. As I finish supper, do prepare yourselves up the stairs to see where we lay our eggs. Do mind yours, as the arch lie low. Welcome to the main bedroom. Where is the line? Before rest, Charles places fine glass warming pans in our bed for the person who wants to switch his mind and rise refreshed on tomorrow. Good day, friend. I am heartily glad to see you. My name is Grace, and I welcome thou to Cook's Cottage. From husband's carving above the front door, thou may see we've dwelled here since the year of 1755. The very same year, our second child, James, took his leave of the royal navy. A most helpful thing. It is now the hour of death. Time for family to say a prayer. It is ready to turn our day. This be our where I spend much of my day. Our fireplace provides warmth to dear husband long before the roosters crow and wards off December. The time is to visit our stable on
Captain Cook. Thank you.
Good night to you, friend. Welcome to the main bedroom, where husband and I lie. Before rest, child places fine brass warming pans in our beds, for the purpose to not suffer a chill night, and rise refreshed on tomorrow. Sometimes I sit and does embroidery here, whilst child plays with a cup and ball under the flicker of our candle. Our bedding is plump with straw and feather, with fresh lavender laid upon our pillow there to help us rest. Each night, husband tightens the bow on the bedrobes, a most helpful thing, so we may sleep snug and safe. It is now the hour of rest, time for family to say a prayer for the safe return of our James, wherever he may be tonight. 'Tis early we must rise on morrow. Husband must tend to stable long before the roosters crow. Be so kind as to visit our stable on your way out to ensure all is well. Good night to you, friend. Welcome to the main bedroom, where husband and I lie. Before rest, child plays fine.
But this part of the building was removed in the 1920s.
in order to widen the adjacent road. Sash windows have also been added and removed over time. The architects employed in rebuilding the cottage in Melbourne also made alterations to the building in order to return it to what they thought was its original 18th century form. This included creating the lean-to roof over the passageway. The cottage also underwent extensive restoration in 1978 when repairs were made and period furnishings added. But how did the Crook family home end up here on the other side of the world? In the 1930s, people were beginning to think about how to commemorate 100 years since European settlement in Victoria and the establishment of the city of Melbourne. The centenary was planned to be a massive celebration. It involved over 300 events held across Victoria, including an air race and the dedication of the Shrine of Remembrance. The Duke of Gloucester provided a royal presence and attracted crowds of 500,000 people for the official opening. So, when the cottage was listed for sale, with the auction notice declaring it to be history under the hammer, centenary organisers could not think of a better centrepiece for the centenary celebrations than to bring a piece of history here. From a British colonial perspective, this was a chance to connect Victoria to the stories and mythos of Captain Crook and to assert Australia's place in the British Empire. Wilfred Russell Grimwaite, along with